I just introduced the fact that I'm here with Jimmy Page in his beautiful house in London, and I think tomorrow is the 12th of January, which is, if I'm right in saying, 50 years ago.
Yeah, 50 years ago on the 12th of January in 1969, the first album, Led Zeppelin 1, was released in America. It had been on the airwaves, and we'd actually been playing in San Francisco at the Fillmore. We'd done 3 dates there, and then we had an extra one added in. So we'd actually played 4 dates in San Francisco, and boy, had we made a difference to San Francisco. And it had travelled. It had travelled on the grapevine. Of course, in those days there wasn't internet and Instagram or whatever, or YouTube, thank goodness. But it travelled through the radio stations. But now we had the product being played as well, along in line with it across the States. And this is a day when it was. The 12th is when it was released.
And the story about how you actually made the album, which was done privately, sort of thing. Would you describe it that way, between yourself and, was it Peter Grant?
Peter Grant. And I or we collectively thought, but I mean, I know what I thought. I basically didn't want. I came from a band called the Yardbirds, and the Yardbirds historically were a most incredible band, and they'd done some great work before I was in that band. And Jeff Beck in particular did some marvellous work with the Yardbirds, and they had a lot of sort of hits. And anyway, eventually Jeff, I joined the band with Jeff, but Jeff left the band, and the management at the time was somebody called Simon Napier Bell, who actually managed Wham many years ago. Yeah. But he decided to approach Peter Grant and Mickey Most to give him not one package, but 2. So one was Jeff as a solo artist, and the other one was the Yardbirds, because Mickey was like a hit maker, and I suppose that Simon Napier Bell didn't really know how the band were ticking on quite an underground level over in the States, and they were quite revered as a band. And well, anyway, so I'm in the band. There's 4 of us now, Yardbirds. There used to be 5, and then there's Jeff. And Mickey Most was going to be doing the recording, and Peter Grant was going to do the management. And I sort of knew Peter. I'd seen Peter before, a lot in sessions and things like that. He'd be there with artists, and it was really good to reconnect. And Mickey Most, I'd done a number of sessions with Mickey Most, like the Donovan things and Lulu, and even his own singles I'd been on. But the big problem came with that Mickey was a hit maker for 45, just short singles. Yeah. And we collectively, be it Jeff or the Yardbirds, were used to sort of stretching songs and having things which are a bit more, the sort of songs were not just top 40 songs, So he was recorded on doing singles, and I think he started to get a little bit, peeved with that. I must say that with the Yardbirds, we were doing singles, and you'd be recording things, and it would be said, "Oh, just try it, and if it doesn't work, we won't put it out." And then you find it was put out in America, and it didn't do the band any good. The spirit of the band, of the Yardbirds.
Was that the reason why you disbanded, do you think?
Well, I don't think it helped, and I think it could well have been the reason, one of the reasons why I disbanded. But for me, it made me know, I knew instinctively that I didn't want to get caught up in a singles trap with albums. So I wanted to do albums, because that's what the airwaves, they were playing whole sides of albums in San Francisco. I could see the way it was gone. It was underground radio, it was stereo radio, and the mono hit single stuff. We didn't want to go anywhere near it. I didn't want to go anywhere near it. And the logic behind it was, yes, the climate was absolutely right for albums, but here comes the other part, the psychology of it, was that if you put out a single, and of course then albums were starting to come out more, there was a renaissance on albums, but the record company would then be saying to you, when you came with your next record, they'd be saying, but there's the single, where's the single?
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm never going to have that, where's the single, because I've seen a band that have had the spirit broken of it, and I knew that it was the right time for album releases.
And what's so
so
sad
that
about
was it.
Jeff is that so many people think about Hi-Ho, Silver Lining, and that disturbs him, I think, with Jeff Beck.
Because he
there
knew
was a single, and that was not really representative of his fantastic work at all, do you think?
Well, no. I mean, Jeff
Yeah.
was a phenomenon and still is an absolute phenomenon as a guitarist. And he'd be the first to admit that he's not a singer. He never really wanted to sing.
No.
But that's the way that Mickey saw him, and he did more than one singing single. You
So
know.
was that the opportunity to?
And then he
the
formed the band with like Rod Stewart,
Yeah.
so that he didn't have to do singing. It was
Of
still
course, I
it was
forgot
still
Rod
recording
was
with
the-
Mickey.
Yeah.
You know.
Who has got a wonderful voice, hasn't he, Rod?
Oh.
Yeah.
Boy, oh boy, they did some wonderful stuff.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
So then you.
So
it's
you're
split
asking
up,
me,
mate.
okay? So that's the sort of that's part of the logic behind it. But the other part of it is, if you think of it this way, I'd been in the Yardbirds and the Yardbirds had folded. I made the decision to form my own band because I had firm ideas of how it could be presented. Certainly, we had all the underground venue circuit sorted out because that's what we were all doing in those days, and the radio's there for it in America. So if I'd have gone to record companies and said, you know what, I was in the Yardbirds, they didn't have any hit records when I was in the band, and not only that, the band broke up, but we were big. We had like a cult following in America, and I'd like to have an advance to make a record. Have you got a group? No, I haven't got a group, but I will get a group. Under those circumstances, you're doomed to disaster. And so it was, with Peter, it was said we should self-finance the thing. Then we can go round, because I was going round with him and him alone, 2 record companies with it. And the 2 record companies we went to Reprise in Los Angeles, because I knew somebody called Andy Wickham, who went on to produce Astral Weeks, I might add.
Oh, wow.
But when I knew him, he was somebody who was almost born in the wrong country. He was crazy on West Coast music, surf music, and he went to work over there for Mo Austin. And I thought, well, let's go and see them, because I have a contact there. But I also had a contact in New York with Atlantic Records, because Bert Burns, who was a producer, who came over to London to do some recordings. And those recordings he did Lulu, he did Here Comes the Night with Lulu, but he also did them.
Oh, wow.
And, I was on Baby Please Don't
with
Go,
Van.
but he did, with Van. And then Van had gone over there and recorded with him over there. And I'd gone, the first time that I went to the States, I was going to LA, and it was said, come and stay at my house, come and stay at my house. And when I went to LA via New York, I stayed at his house, and he introduced me to the Brill Building and also where Atlantic was, and I met key figures from Atlantic. I didn't meet Armit, but I met Jerry Wexler. So
At
we
that
had.
point, had you already made the album, or was that?
No. This is in
still
1965
Yeah.
or 6.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 1965 actually.
Yeah.
So Burns. So we're now we're talking about going to see them in 1968, the end of 1968. But it was because I'd met people at Atlantic. I thought, well, we should go. Peter was really up for this, but Peter was, Peter was the one who was really he was the real business one. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But
And
I could come up with loads of good ideas.
and then actually forming the
band.
it was called the New Yardbirds, was it originally?
Well, what it
and then,
was-
then went on to
What it
Led
was,
Zeppelin later.
well, yeah, because the Yardbirds, they said, we don't want the name, and we don't want to even be called Yardbirds, and They want to do new music, and or different, totally different sort of music, and which they did indeed too. Yeah, it was totally different to anything they'd done in the Yardbirds. But we did rehearsals. We had a. Am I going to go through all of the forming of the band, or shall I condense this to just
probably
having rehearsals? I think we'll condense it because it is a massive long story. But I suppose I can do it because we're talking about the first album.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically, I'll only do this for you, Paul, my dear friend Paul, and to you, Antoine as well, of course. But okay, so basically, now I need to be looking for a singer. Because I've got definite ideas and material, what I want to do in this new band. I've got an idea for a drummer, but I need to find a singer, and I need to get the singer to my house and go through this material, because if he doesn't see it, then I'm looking for another singer, right? So when I was with the Yardbirds and playing with Jeff Beck as well in that incarnation, we did a tour of England, and now get this lineup. There was I Can Tina Turner Review. There was the I Can Tina. Well, actually, there was like a local band that were on first, and in London it was Long John Baldry.
Oh, I love.
Yeah, and then I Can Tina Turner Review, Intermission, Yardbirds, Rolling Stones. I mean, those days are gone, aren't they? But what a wonderful bill. I Can Tina Turner Review, you know.
Rod Stewart sang with Long John at one point as well.
He did.
Yeah.
He jolly well did. What, Steam Packet or whatever. Yeah. But this was Baldry on his. Yeah. But this had played at Ipswich, whatever it was, one of the cinemas at Ipswich, and there was a band on there called Peter J and the Jaywalkers, and Peter J had this singer, and I remembered him from them. So this is like 1965, 66, and it's from then I always remembered him in the back of my mind. And he was apparently only 15, and his name was Terry Reid. Now the thing about Terry Reid is there's an album called River, and then you'll understand why it is that I was thinking Terry Reid, because that's a really good representation. I mean, he's still going now. If you want to know what it was that I heard in him, he had that sort of attack of like Steve Marriott, and in the days Steve Winwood in the very early days, you know, this real soul-y, edgy voice, and really pretty startling, great range and all of that. So I asked the office, and I must say that the Peter Grant and Mickey Most office was rather unusual, and the Rack Music Management and the Rack Recordings and that they both had an office with desks facing each other. Okay, so I'm in touch. These are the old days. They had one person who was a receptionist and secretary, and she would phone up and do her and all of that. And so much is done from this little nucleus, you know. But what's done at the time is I said to Peter Grant, can you track down this guy, who played with Peter J and the Jaywalkers, and I know what his name is. And so there's quite a little time passes, and I call up and say, any news on this guy? Oh, we just heard from him. He's just signed a solo contract. And I said, oh, is he really? Well, that's unfortunate, but he's recommended this guy, Robert Plant. So before we go any further from me going up to see Robert Plant, the thing is, you may have put two and two together, but the person who he signs a record contract with is Mickey Most, on the opposite desk to Peter. So his first album was done with sort of Mickey Most, but the album River is not done with Mickey. I'm not saying it's just a really good vocal performance. It's really
Wasn't that the same case with the drummer as well?
Well, no. So the drummer, I can say now that the drummer, I'd done a session before I'd formed the band or got the people together with, or been to see Robert Plant, with Joe Cocker, with a little help from my friends. I played the guitar on that, and I thought the drummer in that was really good. And I didn't know, I knew he played with Procol every now and again, but I didn't know how active they were. And I thought, because I've played with good drummers all the way through, in bands that I'd been with before I was even a session musician. So, and I mean, I knew really good drummers. And I thought he was pretty good. But I wasn't thinking, that was someone on my list. But basically, it was to go and find a singer. So we go to a teacher's training college I can't remember who I went with now, but it wasn't Peter Grant. And we went to this teacher's training college where there was a band called Ob's Tweedle, and Robert was playing to not many people. There wasn't many people there, and he was doing a lot of sort of West Coast stuff, but I could tell that within his range he was really good. And promising, let's put it that way, promising. But I didn't know what he was like as a person, and I didn't know indeed how he's going to how he's going to take to somebody who's been in the Yardbirds.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, I invited him to my house and I started playing him music and discussing records and let him go through my records. He said, I've got this and I've got that, and I said, that's cool. Certainly the blues things and all of that. And I played him Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You by Joan Baez, which was a live concert. And she's singing this. I said, and he hadn't heard it before. And I said, well, just catch that melody, catch what she's doing and it sustains, and catch that melody and the lyric. There's not much lyric. And I said, because I've got a guitar arrangement for it. And so I started playing and he started singing. I thought, oh, wow. Because you see, what had happened there was that he was mutable. He was able to understand that, maybe this could be good. Yeah. And this guy's guitar arrangement really puts this into something, another sphere. He got it. Yeah. And he was really easy to work with and in a very good way. And then it was all really positive. And I had other things that I played him. I played him Dazed and Confused because the Yardbirds had done that. I said, I want to do this. And
because some of their work was Yardbirds that you played with.
It was a real transition from the Yardbirds.
Yeah, because some of the actual songs were.
Yeah, because I built my character out of being a studio musician, as a live musician in the Yardbirds, and I'd got my own things together, and I thought, well, I want to take this on, the things that I've developed.
And of course, a lot of the tracks were longer, so they weren't singles. They were like 4 minutes, 6 minutes.
Oh, 6 minutes, yeah, all of that.
And also, when you did live things, it went on for 15 minutes.
With the Yardbirds, because we had I put out an album on the website of the Yardbirds, where we're recording in New York. It's in 1968 as well, which is really cool, because this is when Led Zeppelin gets formed. But it's earlier on in the year, and we do a bit of music in the studio, and we also do some live. So it's interesting to be able to hear those things, because you can hear how it moves for me into Led Zeppelin, because I'm definitely going to be using the ideas that I've developed along the way on those things, So
did you employ Robert then, or?
Well, basically, we'll get to that part in a minute. Yeah. So he's got his expenses for coming by train and stuff. Because he could come on where I lived in Pangbourne. There was a station literally opposite, on the other side of the road, and just up a bank, and there was a.
You lived on a boat, didn't you?
No.
Boat house, was it?
Boat house.
That's right.
As opposed to houseboat.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it wasn't floating, but it was a place where they used to hire out punts and skiffs in the 30s. And
lovely.
There was when I bought it, there was a condition in the deeds of it that you couldn't hire out boats from there.
But it was a boathouse.
But it was a boathouse, and it was absolutely magical there. It absolutely was incredible.
So he came down there.
And we discussed what sort of blues things we'd do, like, Can't Quit Your Baby and things like that. And so we had a really good connection going. And he said, he'd come down more than once, and then he said, I've got this drummer that you should see. Now, the thing is that the musicians were very sort of indigenous to their area in those days. Pretty much like during the days of like the Beatles, there were bands that were indigenous to Liverpool, except that because there was such an explosion out of Liverpool, you got to hear about all these bands, not necessarily even the bands down here so much,
No.
or even the bands in Nottingham.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? It was all very localised. It wasn't on a large
10cc
scale.
from Nottingham.
Oh, are they really?
Yeah, yeah. No, not 10cc. 10 years after.
Oh, all right.
That band.
Alvin.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Anyway,
well,
sorry.
that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. So he said, you know, there's this drummer, and he's really, really good. And of course, it's like Robert. Robert hadn't actually travelled name-wise out of Birmingham, and he'd had a previous sort of band, and not the one called Ob's Tweedle, but that's the band that I saw. John Bonham wasn't in that.
Right.
John Bonham had been playing with other people, and now John Bonham had moved right up the scale because John Bonham was working with somebody called Tim Rose.
Yeah, who I loved, yeah.
Yeah, now,
Amazing
interesting
voice.
thing with Tim Rose is, I think Tim Rose writes Hey Joe,
Yeah.
but he certainly did Hey Joe, and he also does Morning Dew, which is
Yeah.
the one that is on Jeff's album. But so he was touring, and it was just him on a guitar, a bit like White Stripes
Yeah.
and Bonzo, and you know, I thought, wow, he's really, 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 really good, and he's really connected. He's listening to the guitar playing and the vocals and all the rest of it. He's really dynamic in his playing. And then he did a solo. And I mean, if I felt his playing up to that point, which I did, now I was really absorbed by it. You know, it was absolutely amazing. And
Strong drummer as well.
yeah,
wasn't he?
yeah.
Strong.
And I thought this would be absolutely perfect.
So that was
Absolutely perfect.
That
So
was
now
your
we
team, then?
got now we got three of them.
Yeah.
And then I get a call from John Paul Jones and saying, "Oh, I hear you're putting a group together, and I'd really like to join if you'd like to consider me on bass." I said, "Great," because now we've got John Bonham who's willing to come down for a rehearsal. He's got to finish the Tim Rose thing,
Yeah.
but he's not going to let anybody down. You know, he's very professional in the way that he did things. And there was a big thing in those days about being like a musician in a town or a city, and you'd be sort of doing a job, and you'd be sort of semi-professional. You'd be playing in the evenings, and you know, Bonzo was professional.
Yeah.
He was now professional, and so anyway, so he came down for this rehearsal, and we all got in a room, and it was phenomenal. It was phenomenal because it was a life-changing moment, because everyone in there was just so good.
So John Paul
and if they were good when they went in there,
John
they
Paul
were all of
had
a
come.
sudden even better
Yeah.
than they'd ever been, because you were in a support system here where you're not just like the featured musician in the rest of a band, be it the drums or the guitar or what. Everybody is equal on an equal field, so everyone elevates like this. And we only had a very, very short time in this place, this studio, which was in Chinatown now, Gerrard Street. It was in Gerrard, basement of Gerrard Street. And then it was agreed that now everyone would come to my house and do rehearsals. So we do the rehearsals, and obviously what you want to do is do it pretty fast, so everyone's sort of not going to be bored by anyone. We weren't going to get bored because what we were playing was so good, and we needed to get a set together beyond what was going to be recorded for the album. And so there was a few things that I suggested. I wanted to see what things they may have done. One of the ones they did was something called Elmer Gantry's Velvet Opera. What is that? Flames, I think it's called. Well, that was one that we did. We even did a version of Shangri-La's Walking in the Sand.
Very nice.
Yeah, I don't know whether that actually made it to the the set. Don't remember now. But I know we did quite a bit of blues and lengthening things and improvising and just coming up and creating new music every night. So we actually, with the Yardbirds, had a tour in Scandinavia that had already been planned. I thought we'd have to cancel it, but no, we weren't going to cancel it because we're going to rehearse the group. We're going to go in there as the new Yardbirds, so we're going in there with a cloak of invisibility, and we go in there as the new Yardbirds, and then when we come back from that tour, then we record.
Yeah.
So,
And
and
that's
we
what
were
you
going
did,
in.
yeah.
We were going in to record. Glyn Johns was the engineer, who was just the most extraordinary engineer, and it was done really quickly, so that these tracks were done, and then the guitar overdubs are done immediately over, because I already know in my head how I want to hear it to be, you know. So it didn't take long to orchestrate these things, and we were going in. It's interesting actually, because the first 3 days that we go in, whether it's 25th, 26th, 27th of September, something like that, it's like 10 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night, and there's another one which is on a Saturday at 6 o'clock. But we're going in whenever we can get in. It's not even quite 3 days in a row. It's 2 and then a day off and then 3. But we were going in on the downtime of the studio, but it was cheap, you see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was done.
And it was done.
Wow.
And it was done, and we'd been playing around like the Marquee and doing dates over here.
And when did
was
it
just
go
getting
from
stronger
new
and stronger.
Yardbirds to Led Zeppelin? Then?
Well, now we've done the album, and it's done under the mantle of New Yardbirds. But then we're going to go to the States. And we're going to go to the States, and we're Led Zeppelin. So that's it.
Where did the name come from in your head?
Well, it didn't. I can't say that. I can't say that I came up with that name, but I can tell you the history of it. Was that when Simon Napier Bell was managing the Yardbirds, before I was in it, and I was a studio musician, and Jeff would come round to my house where I was living and say, "Oh, we've done this and done that," and he gave me a guitar, which was all rather magical.
Probably very psychedelic.
Well, it's on the first album. It's literally on the first.
The one with all
Zeppelin
the
album.
painting all over.
Yeah, so it goes from the Yardbirds painted to that's it's like Excalibur. It goes through, you know, and as I say, that's quite magical because it absolutely is. So it was suggested by Mr. Napier Bell that all the band members made solo records. Now, you know, you would know, and I would know, but he didn't know that could be the kiss of death in the band.
Absolutely.
So, of course, the singer makes his solo record, and then they're going to make a record with Jeff. And Jeff's come round my house, he said, well, I don't know what to do. He said, I want to do an instrumental. And I said, okay, why don't, because I was thinking I'd more recently heard the Bolero, the Ravel's Bolero at somebody's house, and I said, I've got it, Jeff, I've got it. It's Beck's Bolero, it's got to be. And I said, and he he's perked up, and I had a guitar, and I could play the opening part, what's underneath it, and the session was booked, and on the session there was Keith Moon. So this is like the real superstar group, but it doesn't travel outside of this recording. And it's actually on the B-side of Hi Ho Silver Lining, I believe, or it's on the album years later. So anyway, we record it, and Keith Moon gets so really excited by this sort of thing. It's a phenomenal session, the energy of it. If you hear that record, it's just like, wow. You know, boy, would I like to have been in that room at the time when bloody hell I was, and I was playing. And it was, and Keith was so excited by it. And he said, we should form a group. We'll get hold of like Steve Marriott or Steve Winwood, and we'll do a super group, Jeff and Jimmy and me, and we'll get the Ox, which was John Entwistle from The Who, because he's fed up with The Who, and he'll come as well. and basically it was I thought, he seems rather exciting, maybe it'll come off then. But he said, well, there's even a name for it, Led Zeppelin. And he had that name, which I thought was his name. Keith. Many years later we heard that it was actually John Entwistle had come up with, but I asked Keith later whether he minded if I used that name. I said, it's a great name, and I'll come up with other names, but it's a good one, would you mind? He said, no, I don't mind if you use it. It turned out later it was John Entwistle's name.
And there was one of the guys in the original Yardbirds became a photographer, and he did some of the artwork on the album.
He jolly well did. That's Chris Dreyer, yeah. And Chris Dreyer was a good photographer, and he took photographs along the way of various subject matter.
Right.
But he also photographed the Yardbirds, and he also did the photographs of the first sort of press and the back cover. But the first album of Chris's photographs. He's really good. Excuse me, a good photographer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we go to America and we play at the Whiskey A Go Go as Led Zeppelin under our own name, and then we play in San Francisco, and there's an extra date added, and
just because of its popularity.
Well, I'll tell you, there were the other bands that were on. There was like Taj Mahal, and there was Country Joe and the Fish.
Well, I love both of
that
those.
meant a lot
because
of the Vietnam War and everything. And Country Joe and the Fish, they came the first night, and they just didn't come back. And we were carrying on playing. We were getting even an extra booking added in, so we obviously made a real difference. And it came to the point where our second, third night there, even the fourth, there were just local musicians jamming. Wow. Because the main headline, I think Taj Mahal stayed the course.
Isn't it amazing that they could extend it? Because nowadays you probably...
No, you wouldn't be able to do that.
No,
but it was Bill Graham, and it was his gig, and it was a Sunday afternoon that we went in there. Because, and it's written on the tickets, Sunday afternoon.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that.
Even though it's another day. But it's,
do you remember Country
Go?
1, 2, 3, 4, what are we fighting for?
Yeah.
That was at Woodstock, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, he was great.
Yeah, he was. He was.
So where are we now?
So basically, we've got, it comes out on, so we finish our dates there, or whatever it is, and I play on my birthday on the 9th. I think the first one's the 6th, but it goes to, and we are moving on by the 12th. We're not actually in San Francisco. I think the last date is the 10th, but we're in another town. Can't tell you which one it is now. But the album comes out on the 12th of January, and 26 years later to the day, Led Zeppelin get inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which I think is so ironic that it took them that long.
26 years.
Yeah, you think we'd be one of the first ones to be inducted, but because Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has been running for quite a while.
Yeah.
But it's 26 years, and I don't know whether they even knew that it was to the day, but it was to that 12th of January.
So many great stories attached to it. And then always America. That was... you were embraced by America.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, Paul, that's exactly what it was. That it made such a difference what happened in San Francisco.
Because so much of it was, with many bands, were the other way around, wasn't it? Trying to break into America.
Yeah.
Never happened.
Yeah. Well, we broke America through our live performance and through our album. Because both of them were just absolutely phenomenal, and the likes of which no one had ever heard anything like it. This intensity, this light and shade, these dynamics, which are on the album and which were, and music. I mean, people saw us 3 nights in a row. They'd hear not necessarily a different band, but they'd hear different things coming out, and they'd go, "How are they doing this?
I noticed that so many of the tracks are 4 minutes. 4 minutes, 8 minutes, and very different to that singles market, wasn't it? Very different.
Yeah, well, the thing is that they put out Good Times, Bad Times, because that's really quite short.
Yeah.
Not that it was necessarily done as a single, but it was done for airplay as well, airplay on AM. But actually, of course, in America they put out singles because you can really see what they were doing all the time. Over here, we didn't have any singles come out. Only because, as I said, I didn't want to get hooked into this thing where they go, "Oh, third album, where's Whole Lot of Love then?" Go, well, there isn't. That was on the second album. Now we've got Immigrants on, but they can't hear it properly because they're listening for Whole Lot of Love. So I knew, I knew instinctively that was never the way to do things, and so that's it. We delivered in all areas. And so it was massive over there. So we got a foot in.
Did you come back to London?
Well, you see, we got the foot in the door.
Yeah.
And so it's such a massive continent that we decided that we would be putting as much time as we could into going to America.
Yeah.
So, if you went over 6 months, you could be drafted into the Vietnam War. actually, which not many people know that, but
Wow.
you could as an alien, you know.
Yeah.
So we were going over there with like work permits, but obviously we were shy of being there for 6 months. But
Yeah.
then we were coming, you know, we were playing here, but it was much slower over here because we didn't have that massive radio
No.
back up over there. We weren't really played on radio, apart from Alan Freeman played Whole Lot of
Yeah.
Love, and that's the second album.
And over there,
these-
there were
all
so
these-
many independent radio stations, weren't there?
Over there, yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah, there's a whole network of
Yeah.
it. And
And
but
very
we did
good.
have BBC sessions, and that was
Yeah.
your only vehicle
Yeah,
to actually come through
yeah.
and be heard as to what you did. You know, we did
And
some
then
really
later
good
on
BBC
was
stuff.
things like Old Grey Whistle Test, but that was the 70s.
We never did that.
That was 70s, was it? Yeah.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I think Robert did an interview on Old Grey
Right,
Whistle
yeah.
Test, and they did a marvelous video for because you're going to know the person that for Trampled Underfoot from Physical Graffiti.
Right.
So that's still quite way on, isn't it?
Yeah,
Really,
yeah, yeah.
compared to like giving input of Led Zeppelin somewhere or other. And Philip Norman, do you remember Philip
Yeah.
Norman used to do film night?
Yes.
He did this wonderful video of all these old sort of people dancing, and like whole lines of women dancing with their legs up, like not quite can, but
Yeah.
like Tiller girls, you know, and people dancing, and the whole thing with that, with the way that he put that on Trampled Underfoot was really cool.